Welcome to episode 58 of Just Joshing. I am your host, Joshua Pentelarusco, of Right Stuff and Podcast 2, and this week we continue with part 2 of the legendary G.W. Renshaw's podcast. I'm not going to say anything actually at the start of the show. I'm going to go right into it. Got a really cool, some really cool stuff came out of the last podcast. I'm glad to kind of on a downer. I want to actually show it ends on a really good note. So if you like Nightwish, you'll have a really cool story for you at the end here. So, without further ado, let's go to part 2.
That's the depressing thing. We should end on something a little bit more optimistic.
Yes. Yes, so anyway, book 2,
Yeah.
the Prince and the Puppet Affair,
Yes.
is being out for a while now.
It has.
You
I
need to read it.
I do need to read it. This is what's going to happen because my publicist might be eerily similar to your publicist.
Might be.
Might be. Is getting me up on a book tour, and what I'm going to be doing on the said book tour is when I'm not doing interviews and stuff like that, there's a couple of spots where I'm going to have nothing but time. Your book, Aviva's book, another really talented author, by the way.
Yep.
Probably one of Claire's books, Chadwick's book, another really
Chadwick
talented.
Kenter,
Yeah,
yes.
he's really talented guy, man. Holy crap! I got real quick here. I got to go hang out with him in Manitoba. That dude was a champ. All of us did other things besides write. That guy just sat there. He finished his book, man. It was impressive. Like he was by far the most like dude. You got your shit done. It was good, right? No, Chadwick's I'm going to take 4 or 5 books from my friends that I have not read yet, and I'm going to read them on this book tour because.
Wow.
But no, I'm going to read them on this book tour because that'll be my time to actually, because I don't have time anymore.
And then you'll have to read book 3.
I do, and then what I'll do is I'll come back, and when you serve cake again, we should talk. That's how we should end this. Your cookbook.
Oh, yes. You mean Veronica's cookbook?
Yeah. I'm sorry, Miss Chandler. Forgive me.
I'll give you a very small spoiler.
Sure.
From book 2. And that is that Veronica is talking to somebody, a new acquaintance, and Veronica's actually teaching Andrea how to make gnocchi. And if you don't know, look it up. Gnocchi.
Okay.
Which everybody pronounces
Knock.
gnocchi.
Yeah, knock.
Or gnocchi or something.
Yeah.
But it's gnocchi. And they're having dinner together, and she says, this is incredible. You're a fully
Master chef.
You're a master chef. Why aren't you working in a restaurant? And Veronica says very truthfully, because it's a zoo. Anybody who's ever actually worked in a restaurant, it's go, 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 go. People screaming that things aren't ready. The slightest miscalculation is a complete disaster. It's just really a horrible atmosphere. Mm-hmm. And Veronica is more interested in her career and in cooking for friends and family than she is in making money at it. And Andrea says, well, why don't you teach classes? Mm-hmm. And so Veronica thinks about it, goes, that would actually be fun. Mm-hmm. Because then I would be showing people how to do this stuff instead of being screaming and being screamed at. So she makes some arrangements some preliminary arrangements to start teaching classes. The thing is that Veronica's not interested in teaching cooking classes, because the difference between a cook and a chef is that a cook follows recipes created by chefs. And it's the difference between somebody who, I'm going to get people angry with me, who think that they're really good cooks. And you can be a very good cook, but it's basically paint by numbers. You're following in someone else's footsteps. And a lot of times people who follow recipes have no idea why it works. They just put the stuff together and there it is. And it can be extraordinarily wonderful stuff.
Absolutely.
But it's basically a paint by numbers process. The chef, on the other hand, understands the chemistry of the pigments so they can make their own paints so that they can blaze the trail and make the thing that then gets turned into a paint by numbers set. And that's just a matter of sort of endless trial and error. You get a broccoli and you learn what constitutes a good broccoli as opposed to a cruddy broccoli that should be thrown away. You figure out what its essential flavor is by actually getting a floret and chewing on it and going, what does this really taste like? What are the elements to this taste? And then you think, well, it would be better if there was this added to it or that added to it. And in that way, you learn the fundamental natures. I'm getting slightly mystical now. Yes. But you learn fundamental natures of the ingredients that you have available and what those will do when put together. So, for example, I have there's actually a cocktail that Veronica hasn't invented yet, but will soon, which she named after a cat, so it's called a yokogeri. And it's really simple. It's an ounce of sambuca, a can of Coke, and a wedge of lime, sorry. And you just scooch the lime into it, throw it in, and off you go, right? The thing is that, okay, I'm going to get the Coca-Cola company after me for this, for knowing this, but the main flavor in Coca-Cola is cinnamon oil.
Fair enough. That makes sense, actually.
So you have this sambuca, which is where the aftertaste is largely from the licorice sort of flavoring. Combine that with the cinnamon oil, and they just mesh together like this. Right? The lime then just cuts the sugar back a bit and adds a little extra citrus to the...
It also makes it easier for the body to absorb because it breaks it down a little bit too. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Being a chef is a matter of chemistry, physics, and art. Mm-hmm. And when you've mastered the chemistry and physics, then you can take the pieces and create the art. And so this is the world's weakest cocktail, because by the time you've got the ounce of sambuca and you've put all the rest of the stuff in there, it works out to like slightly less than a Canadian beer in terms of alcohol content. So this is not for hard drinkers.
No.
But it's really tasty.
But sometimes it's better.
Yeah.
Sometimes
I mean, if you're going to drink, you're either drinking for what is basically psychologically the wrong reasons, or you're drinking because it's tasty.
Yes, fair enough.
Right?
Yeah. So I think the reason I've been looking down last little bit is just because I'm debating whether or not to make this go 2 parts or not. We could. We could. Yeah, we could. But so what's okay? So we could. All right, screw it. Let's do it. So. So it's like, so you've been working on this cookbook just as a little side thing. Is it going to take place between books, or is are you going to the one year just release 2?
The scheduling of the cookbook is a little fuzzy, because when I came to the realization that Veronica would not produce a cookbook, she would produce a chef's manual. And so there are recipes in it.
Yes.
My lovely wife is tasked with the dreadful job of taste testing the recipes as I produce them.
I'll just have you know, I've been listening to. Occasionally, when I read your Facebook tweets, I'm a little jealous of your wife because she's just like. I listen to what you put together. Sometimes I'm like, that's really good. It's like that's genius. Yeah. I never thought of this. I'm going to remedy that. Yeah.
Well, they say write what you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been cooking since I was, I'm going to guess at 9 or 10. So, Sandy will say, what's for supper? And I'll say, I don't know, I haven't cooked it yet. And literally, I will start cooking something and it'll change in midstream. So I don't really know what I'm making until it's on the plate. But if it turns out very nicely, then I write it down and it'll appear in the cookbook. So this is basically a chef's manual that Veronica is writing for her students in the cooking class that she will be doing. So it starts with boiling water, which is a little trickier than you think it is. Well, probably you don't, but there's some people have trouble with boiling water.
Yes.
And there's no set exact direction for it in that, this is a manual of how to be a French chef or an Italian chef or something specific. It's just a whole bunch of things from all over the place because the idea is to have recipes that expose you to different cuisines. So there's things like, there's some Italian, there's some Indian, there's blatantly British cuisine, there's just stuff from all over. Oh, there's some Georgian recipes as well.
Interesting.
That's the country Georgia, not...
No, I know. It's like I said,
not the other one.
No, it's like I got it. It's like interesting. Those I'd actually like on a personal note. I'd be curious about those because I personal like for different reasons. I'm always fascinated about the food a culture has. Because there's a lot you can learn about the health of a culture based on what they eat.
Oh yeah. Well, we had the panel this afternoon about the places in the world that we'd set our mystery stories. And I had a fairly long list, actually. Go, Veronica. You'll find out about that in book 3.
Nice.
But the thing is that when you write, everybody can write about the sites. I went to Georgia. There was like this highway, and there were cars zipping back and forth, and this, slightly decrepit building because a restaurant next to a highway always looks slightly decrepit no matter how wonderful it is inside. And I went in and there was this and that on the ceiling, on the walls, yada, 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 and I had a nice lunch. Right? That's concentrating on the visual aspects. But what really grounds you in that scene is that you go inside, the door closes, and the traffic stops. Because the restaurant that I'm talking about, all of the restaurants, by the way, in the book, with the exception, of her father's, are real restaurants. Because I don't want to just make stuff up. Right? So, for example, the Pushpa is a very nice little family-owned Indian restaurant here in Calgary. They've got the world's best butter chicken.
Yes.
And, several scenes take place in that restaurant. But it's the pure sensuality of Veronica being introduced to the butter chicken, for example, of the... oh my God, it takes serious willpower for me not to lick my plate.
Yes.
Like, this is good stuff.
Oh yeah.
And the slight spiciness of the scent of it, the texture of the perfectly, almost melting in your mouth, literally, chicken pieces. All of that is the experience of that cuisine. It's not just, we stopped in Georgia at the roadside for lunch. It's, well, what did you have for lunch? Well, they're big into what we would call shish kebabs.
Yes.
So you have these skewers of meat and vegetables, and they get served to you on a bed of rice, and they're very simply prepared, but oh my God, are they good?
Absolutely. No, when I do travel, I make it a point. Actually, one of the advantages to not having a car is you literally have to go like everybody else goes. So you get to find all these neat little nooks and crannies and these interesting spots, and you get a real feel for a city that way too, because every city is a character. Every one of them. Everyone's like Toronto's a very different character than Calgary. Calgary's a very different character than Vancouver. Vancouver's a very different character than LA, right? They all have this certain vibe to them. And the neatest, coolest things I always find going in there is finding the stuff that nobody goes to or things take for granted anymore, because that's the best stuff usually.
Or the places that only the natives go to because the tourists are going, oh, I'm not going in there.
Yeah, I'm like, well, you should.
But the people who live there know that Giorgio makes the best pizza.
Period.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I think it was Jimmy Carter visited Italy during his presidency, he had a habit which drove, of course, his Secret Service people completely mental. He'd just go, that looks interesting, let's stop there. And so he stopped at this little pizza joint in Naples, and from what I've been able to, they basically renamed it after his visit to the President's Pizzeria, in Italian, of course, where it sounds much better.
Yes.
But they basically are one of the best Neapolitan pizza places anywhere. So that restaurant appears in the book a couple of times when they need takeout.
Of course, why not?
That'll confuse some people, but it works very nicely. Thank you.
I'd do it if I had that luxury. I'd take advantage of it. Screw that! I'm not going to go anywhere else.
Yep. The Georgian restaurant, I found an email address for them and just wrote to them and said, hi, I'm writing a book and I'd like to put your restaurant in the book because it seems like a really, really good and interesting restaurant. So could you take some pictures of the inside for me so that I know what it looks like and I can describe it properly? And of course they were like, seriously, you're kidding? No, I've read a ton of online reviews and you're considered one of the best restaurants in Georgia. Really? Yeah. So they sent me a bunch of pictures, which is as close to being there as you can get when the owner is taking pictures of the place so that you can include him in your book.
He would be genuinely flattered, actually, because everybody takes for granted what they do. Like everybody, it's just a human thing. And when somebody appreciates what you do, there's nothing quite like it.
Yeah.
So you probably made his day, or his week, or his month, and hopefully you should send him a copy of that book when it's done. You should. He'd love it. Just feel him go to the page, and he'll be like, yeah.
Yeah. One of the bizarrest things in Book 3 that happened in relation to Book 3 was that I was doing research on Finland, of course, and at one point Veronica is bored, as she tends to get because she's not a patient girl.
Nobody's perfect.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
And so she is waiting for the guy that she has come to Finland to talk to get back to her. And in the meantime, it's like, well, what do I do? Sit in the hotel room and stare at the ceiling? I'm in Finland. The TV is Finnish. If there's any bookstores anywhere, they're Finnish. If there's a movie house, it's Finnish. All right? I don't speak Finnish. What do I do? So she wanders down to the lobby of her hotel and to see about a going out for supper. Because, the hotel restaurant is fine, but after a while it's like, yeah, I've had the same thing. Let's go somewhere else. And she sees a poster for a concert. Fortunately, concert is almost the same in English as it is in Finnish. And so she just on a whim decides to go and see this concert. Having absolutely no idea what it's about. It's just like, it's a concert. I'm going to go see it.
Awesome.
And she goes out and has a lovely dinner first. And then goes over to the university. Turns out that the concert is in the building next to the office of the professor she's come to see. Small town. Now, the reason that scene came about, and then there's the thing where she's at the concert, and I just gave my first impressions of what she saw and heard at the concert and how it affected her. A friend of mine in Edmonton had been talking about how fond he was of Finland. So when I was researching Finland, I said, would you mind answering some questions for me? Not a problem. And he said, what area? And I said, well, I almost literally stuck a pin in a map in the general area that I needed and just went, the town of Jonsu. And he went, oh, that's no problem. I spent last summer there. What do you want to know? And the reason that he was there that summer was that he had been drafted into performing in a series of concerts which had been created by a music teacher in the town of Kite, which is 102 kilometers southeast of Jonsu. And the name of the music teacher was Plamen Dimov. And quite some years ago, he had some really talented students who wanted to start a band. And so he really encouraged them to really become solid in music and to follow their dream. The name of the band was Nightwish.
Awesome. I love that band.
Yeah.
I love that band. They're a good band.
Which introduced me to the whole world of symphonic metal, which I was previously unaware of.
Blind Guardian. You gotta listen to Blind Guardian.
Okay.
Yeah, if you like symphonic metal, Nightwish is good, and I love Nightwish, but Blind Guardian's, wow.
Anyway, so the concert, he gave me the URL for the YouTube video of the concert that they did in Jonsu, and I moved the date just slightly so that Veronica could be there. But that's the concert that she goes to.
Nice.
And so, since I had never been exposed to metal before, especially Nightwish, her reactions are my reactions watching this and going, okay, so metal, that's the headbangers screaming and gutturally on stage and trashing their guitars, and because that's everybody thinks Norwegian death metal is metal.
Yes.
Whereas what I've found out, of course, is that there's like almost hundreds of different genres.
Yes.
So the first piece in the concert, this really lovely young lady comes out wearing a sort of a peach, pinky kind of colored dress. She looks like she's going to her prom. And she's got this incredibly pure, beautiful, not quite operatic. It wasn't that style of singing, but certainly that purity of tone. And she was singing what I purposely had not looked up. So I had fresh eyes looking at it for Veronica. And what she sang was Elan.
Nice.
Right? And it was just an entire concert of Nightwish covers. And then at the end, everybody came out and formed a mixed choir, and they did the hymn from Finlandia.
Very nice.
Which is also a Nightwish cover, because Nightwish has done Finlandia. And if you look up a YouTube of that, it's utterly astonishing to people who are on the outside of the metal community and don't recognize how deep it is, because they're in this hall with 5,000 people thronging on the floor, and they start playing Finlandia, which is, it's been, the tune has been stolen for something like 5 or 6 Christian hymns. So that gives you an idea, if you haven't, if your listeners haven't heard it, as to sort of the.
You almost maybe want to put that actually in as a break in the podcast so people can actually hear it. Maybe close out with that, but I don't know if I'm actually allowed to do it. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you can always point them toward the URL.
That's what I will do.
Yep. And the other interesting thing is that you think metal band, smashing guitars, and the main instrument in their cover of it is Irish pipes.
Yeah.
And it's like, seriously? And there's that sort of half cheer at the beginning where people start to recognize what they're going to do, where people go, yes, and then shut up. So we've got 5,000 people, all of the metalheads, dressed in black with spiky collars and makeup on, and they just shut the hell up and listen to this incredibly beautiful classical piece played by their favorite metal band.
Absolutely.
So they did that as a choral piece, and it was just stunningly gorgeous. So Veronica, really didn't understand, because of course they sang it in Finnish, and she didn't really understand why it affected her, but she was just about in tears, which is the way I feel every time I hear it.
Yes.
And so then she, at the end of the concert, she actually runs up on stage as people are filing out and grabs the last person to express how much the concert affected her. And the last person off the stage in the video is actually the wife of the fellow that was telling me about the town. So he comes back to see who she's talking to, and so she has a conversation with these 2 friends of mine in the book. It's just a small one, but
a very cool one.
A very cool one, and the Nightwish fan community has, I'm actually part of their closed group.
Oh wow! See, I'm not even that. I like their music, but I never did that. No, I stumbled on them accidentally last year, and I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Stuff.
And I've had people become my friends who are, international musicians, and the whole thing just snowballed from this one thing of asking him about a random town in the middle of Finland, and it became this entire cultural thing that
moved you and inspired others to find you, which is really, really, it's amazing how intricate life really is, and how everything is actually connected in ways you never, ever could have possibly imagined.
Yeah. So that's really my favorite story of writing so far. Because now also, because it's an international community that gets together every year for these concerts, I needed somebody who was fluent in German. Because, if you're going to put some language into your story, it has to be right.
Yeah, exactly.
And it has to be the way that a person living there would say it. It can't be, off some textbook or Google Translate or something. Because, sometimes it's right and sometimes it's hilariously wrong.
Yes.
And so I just said, I have a couple of sentences I'd like to translate into German. Can somebody get back to me if they're help? And all these people who are basically strangers to me went, oh, I can do that. And so I had a couple of people respond, and I checked their translations against each other, not to see if there was a mistake, but to see if one of them just sounded better, just as sounds. And so I took sort of half of one and half of the other, because there's two sentences, right? And that appears in the book. So of course the people appear in the acknowledgments for their assistance.
Yeah.
One thing that I find really almost annoying about the whole thing is that none of them speak less than 3 languages. And as a North American who sometimes stumbles over English, you just sort of go, I feel inferior now.
Okay, I can speak now like 1.5 languages. I used to be a lot better at French than I am now. I just haven't spoken it in so long. Mm-hmm. It's rusty. I literally have to go to Quebec or France or just talk for about a few weeks for it to come back, because I just haven't done it. I can kind of talk in Spanish, and I can swear in a couple other languages.
Yes.
Yes. I love it's the opportunity here. Mm-hmm. That's really what it comes down to. You have older cultures that have been around a long time. They've seen things kind of come and go, and they've developed their own way of thinking. Mm-hmm. Here, you have one culture that, unfortunately, it's us, that never fully developed its own identity, and you have another culture who has done the opposite and has kind of invoked that's the only identity they have, mm-hmm. right? So it's like the opportunity to get that exposure just isn't there. It's not, and that's unfortunate, but it's just the way it is.
And I realize that. In fact, Veronica makes several comments about the size of Europe, mm-hmm. because here, well, I don't really want to go to Edmonton because it's 3 hours there and 3 hours back, and mm-hmm. whereas in Europe it's sort of like, well, let's pop over to Austria to do some shopping, and then we'll go to Poland for lunch. And
it's so doable, and it's incredible because you get different thoughts, different ideas, and you get a whole different way of thinking just by your neighborhood there. Mm-hmm. Here, we're more isolated, and that's the big difference.
Yeah, I did make up one. I must admit that in the Kalevala affair, I did make up one. Particularly, what's the word I'm looking for? Well, I made up a couple of historical people, but there was one in particular that I made up knowing that he was truly symbolic. The older ones are from just before the 30 Years' War. So, early 1600s. So, they're just there for the plot. Mm-hmm. Purely for the plot. There's no symbolism involved here. They're just they're just there. But there is a Polish Jew and his son that I made up who represent all of the Poles who really did amazing things at the outset of World War II. When I was growing up, Poles were considered to be, one of those ethnic groups that you make jokes about. For those old enough to remember All in the Family, Archie Bunker,
Yes.
talking about the stupid Polak, and
You guys are still talking?
Yes.
What are you guys talking?
we're actually doing an interview.
Actually, yeah. Good. No, it's okay. You can talk to me later. I'll tell you what it is. Anyways, it's all good. It's all good.
But anyway, when the Germans came rolling into Poland at the very beginning of World War II, the Poles did some really remarkable things that we just don't hear about in our history. What we're taught of World War II history is, and the Germans, rolled into Poland, and then they went other places, and there were bad things happening, and then the Americans landed and everything was fine.
Yeah, okay.
But, for example, Alan Turing, who is famous as the person who broke the German cipher, the Enigma machine, and yada, 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 he based his work on earlier work by Polish cryptographers who had broken the earlier version of the Enigma machine, and then the Germans had to beef it up because they knew that it had been broken by the Poles. So there was all of this stuff that the Polish people did to resist the invaders of their country that we don't hear about. If you talk to a Polish person, they all know about it.
I think my family comes from Malta. We have been conquered by everybody.
Pretty much.
Yeah, no, pretty much everybody. It doesn't matter. You name it, we've been conquered by it. What isn't really talked about my culture is they fought every time.
Yeah.
They fought every time. They resisted. It's just because you're conquered. In fact, I've learned this personally. Sometimes in defeat is when you are actually at your most heroic. It's not when you win; it's when you lose, and it's because that says more about you than I think than winning does. Yeah. If you lose and you go down swinging, that says something about someone that just with bad quits when it gets tough.
Yep.
Very, very different kind of thing. The Germans were ready for war more than anybody else was when the time came. Poland didn't have a chance.
No.
They had no chance.
None at all.
And seriously, by the time anyone had a chance, Germany had almost taken over Europe. I mean, there was nothing that could be done. The fact that, but that doesn't mean they didn't try. Didn't mean that they didn't.
The thing is that if I just smash into you, knock you down, kick you a few times, and then look around for other opponents, yes, you're on the ground, yes, you're bleeding, but at some point you get enough wind back to say, is he looking in my direction? Maybe I could grab this piece of pipe here and do something to
even up the score.
Yeah. And the Polish fellow that I invented, as a symbol, just went around and collected documents from the various churches because the Germans were known to not care about anything other than Germany. If it's Aryan, great. If it's not, well, we'll burn it to the ground if we feel like it. So he collected the documents from, the various churches in his area. He and his son then buried those so that they would be preserved until after the war. I won't tell you what happens to them, but they are the only characters who are fictitious, but they are consciously symbols of what ordinary people were doing. It wasn't that the Poles had, their army managed to get a second wind, because the Germans just marched straight over them with a huge advantage in terms of men and material. So it wasn't...
It wasn't a fight, it was a slaughter.
It wasn't that the Poles were bad, it was that the Germans were just too overwhelming.
Yep.
And so this is the kind of thing that ordinary people were doing in secret. And most of them will never get into history books because they were caught and killed, or their families still won't talk about it because either it was too painful or because they've just got a family history of, we don't talk about this in case the Germans hear about it.
Nice.
Right? And
it carries on. This was an amazing chat. I think we probably should call, because we probably could talk for another hour. Easy.
Oh, yeah.
Easy. So, how about this? We'll end this on this. We did this last time. I'll do it this time. Name current book. How people can find you online.
The most recently published book is the Kalevala Affair, Kalevala. I had to picture that in my mind, which incidentally is finished for Land of Heroes.
Oh,
You guys are still.
well, you have to eventually.
Hawkeyes.
Yeah, we're doing an interview.
You guys were there. Oh.
Bye.
Hey, interview client, go now.
Gary's the best. He's
That's-
the best.
They're right. You are really good. So
The fellow that said interview, go, was in fact
our publicist.
Our publicist, Mickey Mickelson.
Yes.
Wonderful fellow. And yes, what was I saying? Oh yes,
Yeah.
Kalevala Affair. It's available now on Amazon and as an ebook as well. And where can people find me? On Facebook,
GW Renshaw.
GW Renshaw.
All right.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is part 2 of my interview with GW Renshaw. Awesome, huh? Coolest Nightwish story I've ever had. I've ever heard, I should say. Blah, blah, blah. I'm so special. This is my 3rd take, by the way, trying to lead this podcast. And, yeah, hoping this one's better. GW's next public appearance, will be at Owl's Nest Books, October 18th. You should check him out. Him and a bunch of Creative Edge crew will be there promoting their books. My clients, Craig and Chris, will be doing a multiple book launch on November 12th. Craig is going to be launching 2 books. One an ebook, one print book. The ebook is Battle Stations, which is book 3 of the Crash Dive series. I'll be looking for reviewers in the next days and weeks to come. If you are interested in reviewing Crash Dive, contact me at michaelthroughtime@lib.com. I will make sure you get a copy to review. Beyond all that, he's also launching on November 12th at his house his own book, Crash Dive, Book 1. The physical copy of it in paperback will finally be out for all we've got. Chris Mars will also be giving a sneak peek to her novel, Entangled. There he is, Entangled Souls. And yes, I am awesome this way with names, you can tell. But Entangled Souls is co-written with Jean O'Neill, and like I said, Chris kills it. I love her character work. You should definitely check out her stuff, and say hi to her. Check out her website at hauntedmars.com. And, just subscribe to his newsletter and just see how awesome she really is. Beyond all that, my next event will be C4 in Winnipeg. You will find me at Viva Bell Herald's Terryville, pushing not only my books, but hers as well. And that will do it this week. I am Joshua Penteloresco. I write stuff. I podcast too. I'm also a publicist, and I will talk to you all next week. Stay inspired out there. Have a good one. And I'll see you next time.
Josh.